Hello, my name is Jon Griffin, Donlon. A lot of people call me Dr.Leisure. Usually I make these short videos on a variety of topics, but this example is different. I'm presenting a paper about film in Louisiana, and I also discuss my book on the same topic. There'll be another video expressing more about that book, but here is about my paper dealing with film in Louisiana. Thank you very much. Quite some time back, I became interested in the reciprocal relationship between film, movie making, and the Pelican State. I've been engaged in movies for decades, now and then earning a living writing about that commonplace part of popular culture. I published an article in the Folklore Society Journal, Louisiana Miscellany, also run on the state web resource Folklife in Louisiana, Celluloid Mistakes, We've Been Framed, Louisiana in the Movies, which presented a focused but preliminary review of approximately the first decade of the Louisiana Motion Picture Tax Incentive Acts by offering a glimpse of the state's historic activity via a partial list of film production in the state, though mostly visiting the impact of the contemporary legislation. I also tried to place the larger body of work into a bit of longitudinal context. Obviously, I was engaged with the phenomena of film, filmmaking, and representation in film, so predictably, I eventually extended work from that article into a book-length format a couple of years later, recently publishing my We've Been Framed, Louisiana in the Movies. This reference book provides a significantly large collection of the movies made in, set in, or referencing Louisiana. The project involved identifying and, where possible, annotating a reasonably thorough and critically approached list of the film and video artifacts either made in part or in whole in Louisiana, or which allude to or are cited here, or which feature a Louisiana connection of some sort, broadly speaking. Unfortunately, this reference book suffers from the same reality as Marcel Proust's monumental novel La Recherche du Temps Perdu. Both are too big to usefully throw at the cat. As a result of this personal history, described in brief, I was delighted to read of this year's conference topic and the opportunity to discuss identifiable circumstances nested in the normal creation and production of art and commercial films which frame or present a form of meaning, authentic, inauthentic, perhaps hybridized, yet essentially commodifying Louisiana's cultures, history, literature, peoples, and places. Having looked over a reasonably pie wedge of film production in the state, I might with some confidence suggest that this agenda, while not always intentional, is quite often fits the contour. Taking that deep dive into how Louisiana's cultures, its history, literature, peoples, and its places are framed in film is all too much like investigating how the sausage is made. Now, perhaps, I might in a certain sense poach on the notion of different types of capital Pierre Bourdieu introduced in his theory: economic, cultural, social, and symbolic capital. For our use, we can insert the notion that Louisiana's cultures, history, literature, peoples, and places can then be discussed as silos of capital, interconnected, and which may be enhanced or depleted, and all of which are subject to abuse or control, often enough with similarly important yet ill-defined relationships implied or obvious. An article in 64 Parishes by Vicki Meyer, The Louisiana Film Industry, takes a fairly deep dive into the history of the thing, describing activity since the end of the 1800s. Many people point to Tarzan, a couple of decades into the 1900s, as being our real start, but the American Biograph and Mutascope Company filmed short documentaries, or so-called actuals, in New Orleans as early as 1898. These films showed scenes from the Big Easy and were popular. This is remarkable, yet easy for us to understand with our well-established connection to France and French culture. It's generally considered that commercial filmmaking itself, as we know it, started in 1895 with the Lumiere brothers' first public screening of their films in Paris. They presented short films such as workers leaving the Lumiere factory and the arrival of a train at Le Chiotte station. Audiences loved the feeling of authenticity and the lifelike representation of everyday scenes. Are we to view filmmaking as art, craft, or crass commercialism? Just another extractive industry like energy, fisheries, or wood pulp? While film, in a modern sense, is by some said to be an art form, its inception was the product of years of scientific and technical development and experimentation, advancing hit or miss in the fashion of mold creeping across the crust of a discarded butt of bread. After reviewing decades of work and hundreds of releases, I'm wondering how profound the Hawthorne effect might be. What are the unintended consequences of spending our varied capital on the national stage? This so-called effect or impact suggests that being watched or subject to the gaze tends to change the recipient. The Hawthorne effect describes the phenomena where individuals alter their behavior when they are aware of being observed. This can lead to improved performance or productivity, simply because the individuals know they are being studied. The term originates from studies conducted at Western Electric's Hawthorne Works factory in the 1920s and 30s. Alter, distort, or improve might be closer to the mark. How do we read our reflection in films like Southern Comfort, 1981, directed by Foster Dickerson? When the commercial product is described this way: the movie follows a squad of guardsmen as they navigate the swamps, their initial lightheartedness giving way to fear and paranoia as they realize they are being stalked by unseen adversaries. The locals, who are not explicitly shown as enemies, are depicted as suspicious and territorial, leading to escalating violence and tension. The film uses the swamp setting to create a sense of claustrophobia and isolation, amplifying the psychological horror experienced by the soldiers. The Louisiana swamp is used as the foil to establish fear among American soldiers. This was 1981, remember, and similar troops were destined to confront the legitimate enemy in Southeast Asia. We might also wonder if standing in for Africa, as when the silent film Tarzan of the Apes, around 1918, whose jungle scenes were shot in and around Morgan City, is good or bad. It's reputed to be the first time a major feature film was shot outside of New York or California. Did we gain capital as hipper than the right coast or lose capital being thought of as a closer, more convenient banana republic. While production of the first films was a species of economic boon, the Tarzan films shot in Louisiana are more nuanced. After the first one, Tarzan of the Apes, another, Tarzan and His Mate, is apparently a pastiche composed from footage shot during the first go-round. The producers of Tarzan's Secret Treasure chose Florida and California, they said, because of the needs of specific scenes, overall practicality, and the fact that the state had an even more established film infrastructure at the time. There might seem to be little harm in using the boot state's lush landscape to create a fictive narrative. Some do wonder about creating fiction from more dark realities, or even the presence of green Trojan horses in service to disinformation. Voodoo is at the center of Angel Heart and other films such as Sugar Hill and The Bond Potboiler, Live and Let Die, lean on it heavily. The propagandistic nature of Robert Flaherty's 1948 film Louisiana Story was somewhat obvious at its release, but with well-financed industry effort, this only became increasingly understood over time, in step with the deleterious effects of the oil industry on Louisiana's environment and communities becoming more apparent. Unfortunately, in 1948, the New York Times chose to focus on the cinematic features of the faux documentary, carefully presenting a benign portrayal of the oil industry's integration into the bayou landscape. Bosley Crowther, for more than a quarter century film critic for The Great Gray Lady, acknowledged the film's artistic merit, which had the result of apparently supporting the subterfuge Standard Oil Company aimed to convey, the harmlessness and even beneficial aspects of their operations, and of course, by implication, the benign nature of the industry in general. Especially as time passed, but also at the time of release, those with a deeper understanding of Louisiana's history and environmental challenges immediately saw Louisiana Story as propagandistic, part of the carefully constructed astroturf of disinformation being deployed after World War II. The supposed documentary presented sanitized depictions of oil drilling. The thing downplayed environmental consequences of the oil industry, and it shaded the fact that it was funded by Standard Oil Company, not to praise us, as Mark Antony put it, but to bury us, that is, to promote Standard Oil. Editing my reference book, I came across a portion of the outstanding production of art, commercial, and other films in the state, documentaries, educational, and features for entertainment. I continue to be interested in the creation and production of films which frame or present a form of meaning, authentic, inauthentic, perhaps hybridized, yet essentially commodifying Louisiana's cultures, history, literature, peoples, and places. In a year or two, I'll update my reference book because how we are framed and what the frame contains continues.